She sat there frozen, not out of fear, but disbelief. On the big screen behind the CEO, lines of code scrolled like falling rain, code she knew by heart because she wrote it, function by function, line by line. Every module, every encryption key hers. And yet, standing under stage lights and corporate applause, Colin Reichert called it his team's breakthrough. He called it company-owned innovation. Not once did he mention Evelyn's name. Not once. Her inbox pinged at that exact moment. One new message. Role transition notice. The subject line said, realignment. The attachment? Severance. The very same day her work was being paraded like a trophy, she was being erased. What do you call it when someone steals your work and then fires you for it? She didn't scream. She didn't walk out. She watched. Quietly. Because what no one saw was that Evelyn Shaw had been preparing for this for years. She just didn't think the betrayal would come so publicly, so shamelessly. So easy for them. But before we go deeper into what happened next, where are you watching from today? And more importantly, have you ever had something taken from you while everyone else just clapped and moved on? Drop a comment if this brings back a memory. Your story might just help someone else feel seen. Before the stage lights and stolen credit, there was something else, a quiet promise. Back when Evelyn Shaw first joined SafeguardX, the company looked nothing like the polished machine it pretended to be now. The office was smaller, the coffee was worse, and the servers crashed twice a week. But there was heart, real scrappy underdog energy. People worked late, not because they were told to, but because they believed in what they were building. And Evelyn, she thrived in that chaos. She wasn't loud, she didn't wear power suits or network at happy hours. But she showed up every morning before sunrise and stayed until long after the lights in the parking lot turned off. She wrote code like it was a language only she spoke, and she solved problems no one else could even name. That's why Marcus Lane, the former CEO, took notice. He wasn't flashy either. He wore wrinkled shirts and carried his meetings on notepads instead of iPads. But when he saw Evelyn's early prototype of Athena, the biometric AI engine she'd been building quietly in her garage, he didn't just praise her. He made a promise. If you can get this to run clean, he told her, you won't just be the lead engineer. I'll back you for CTO. I mean that. And she believed him. So while others built pitch decks and gamified the roadmap, Evelyn stayed in the code. She debugged on weekends, skipped holidays. She didn't mind. Because she thought she was building something with the company, not for it. But Marcus left 2 months before Athena's launch. Early retirement, they said. Quiet exit, no drama. That's when Colin Reichert walked in, all pressed shirts and polished teeth, with a vision, a restructure plan, and a smile just wide enough to hide a knife. And Evelyn, still focused on making Athena perfect, didn't see the storm rolling in. Not yet. It started with a glitch. Evelyn logged in one morning to check the Athena repository just like she always did. But the access screen blinked red. Permission denied. That had never happened before. She tried again. Same result. Then she checked her admin dashboard. Gone. Her name, her credentials, all stripped without warning. It was like she had been quietly edited out of her own system. At first, she thought it was a mistake, some back-end update, a sync issue, something technical. But then came the Slack message from Logan. Hey, just a heads up, heard your project got moved under Colin's task force. You okay? Moved her project? She opened the internal roadmap. The Athena platform, which she had personally architected, refined, and tested for over 3 years, was now rebranded as Project Helios. Lead contact, Colin Reichert. There was no mention of Evelyn. Not in the footnotes, not in the devlogs, not even in the archived commits. Just gone, as if she'd never existed. Her chest tightened, not from panic, but from something colder. The kind of ache you feel when someone takes credit, but also takes your name. She sat at her desk, staring at the screen, unable to move. Then a notification popped up, a calendar invite. Meeting with Human Resources, 9 a.m., room 306. No subject line, no context, just silence. Evelyn didn't click accept. She didn't click anything. She just sat there wondering how fast a person could go from irreplaceable to invisible. And deep down, she knew this wasn't a mistake. It was the start of something calculated. Room 306 was colder than she remembered. Not just the temperature, the kind of cold that settled beneath your skin, quiet and clinical. Evelyn stepped in without saying a word. At the far end of the table sat Patrice from HR, blazer too bright, smile too wide, voice rehearsed like a speech from a seminar. "Hi, Evelyn. I know this isn't easy. Let's just walk through the paperwork together, okay?" No small talk, no real explanation. Just a glossy folder slid across the table like it was a birthday card. But Evelyn already knew what was inside. Termination agreement, severance terms, non-disparagement clause. And near the end, buried in dense legal text, one paragraph highlighted in yellow, employee agrees to assign all intellectual property developed during or related to tenure at SafeguardX. Related to. That phrase lingered. She let her fingers rest on the folder, didn't open it, didn't flinch. "Is this standard now?" she asked softly. Patrice blinked, caught off guard. "Oh yes, legal language, just housekeeping. It's best to sign today so we can process severance promptly." Evelyn offered a small, hesitant smile, the kind people mistake for submission. "I'll need to have my attorney review it first," she said. The silence that followed was heavy. Not hostile, just expectant, as if they were waiting for her to cry, or beg, or whisper something about how hard this was. But she didn't. She stood up calmly, slid the folder back across the table, and said, "Thanks, Patrice. I'll be in touch." As she left the room, she could feel the eyes behind her. They thought she was scared. They thought her silence meant defeat. But the truth was, Evelyn Shaw hadn't spoken yet because she was still deciding where to aim. That night, Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't pour wine or call a friend or stare out the window like some corporate tragedy cliché. She went straight to the hallway closet, pulled out an old fireproof lockbox, and carried it to the floor. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside, beneath old tax returns, faded utility bills, and one expired passport, was a blue folder, worn at the edges, labeled in black marker, "Offer Letter, SafeguardX, signed 2011. She opened it slowly, careful not to tear the fragile paper. And there it was. Tucked between the confidentiality clause and a long-forgotten non-compete sat a paragraph most people skim past without a second thought. Section 14. 3. Employee shall retain exclusive ownership of any intellectual property developed off-site, outside of working hours, and without the use of company equipment or resources. She read it again, then a third time. Every version of Athena, from the earliest beta to the final secure build, had been coded after hours on her personal laptop in her own garage. The biometric modules, the AI routines, even the firmware encryption logs, all time-stamped, archived, and documented. Every single update logged with date, time, and device ID. SafeguardX didn't own a line of it. Not legally, not even close. She leaned back against the couch, heart steady. The silence around her felt different now, less like emptiness, more like the edge of something sharp. They had taken her name off the code, but they'd forgotten something much more important. They forgot what she put in writing. And in that moment, Evelyn Shaw realized she didn't need to scream. She just needed to open the right drawer. Naomi Briggs didn't do small talk. She didn't smile for politeness or soften her words to make people comfortable. She didn't have to. When Evelyn stepped into her office, a narrow room above a bookstore with no logo on the door, Naomi didn't offer coffee or ask how her day was. She just looked up from a stack of papers and said, "You brought it." Evelyn nodded and placed a small black USB on the desk, then a binder. Then a padded envelope with her original contract. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "That all yours?" Every line of code, Evelyn replied, and all of it built outside company hours, on my own gear. I documented everything. Naomi didn't smile. She just leaned forward and opened the folder like it was a treasure map. Page by page, she scanned Evelyn's notes, timestamps, schematics, and firmware logs. She paused on the offer letter paragraph, 14.3, and read it twice without blinking. Then she looked up. It's clean. One beat. Very clean. That was it. No long speech, no dramatic reaction, just a pencil tap on the clause that would change everything. Naomi Briggs had built her career dismantling tech giants who underestimated people, like Evelyn. Quiet builders, overlooked minds, the ones no one saw coming until it was too late. She pulled out a yellow notepad and started scribbling. We won't go loud. Not yet. Let them think they've won. Evelyn nodded, her voice steady. They think I'm walking away. Naomi didn't even look up. Good, that's the best time to walk back in. As Naomi outlined the first steps of a plan, Evelyn sat still, not in fear, but in something colder. Focus. They thought they erased her, but they just activated her legal architect. And Naomi, she was already sharpening the first move. The email was short, understated, almost polite. It came from Naomi's office and was addressed to Safeguard X's general counsel, CC'd to HR. No bold fonts, no legal firestorms, just a quiet subject line, IP ownership review, Miss Evelyn Shaw. Attached were 3 documents, a scanned copy of the original 2011 contract, an indexed log of Athena's development timeline, and a formal request to delay any severance proceedings until ownership matters were clarified. No threats, no accusations, just facts. Naomi's style wasn't to yell. She believed in pressure that whispered, because when it's quiet, people lean in, and that's when the panic starts. Evelyn read the email twice before Naomi hit send. Her hands didn't shake, her voice didn't crack. She just nodded and said, let's see how they respond. They didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Evelyn got a message from Colin's assistant. A coffee chat, she called it. Mr. Riker would love to reconnect. Casually, of course. The meeting took place in a private lounge on the 14th floor. Leather chairs, no notepads, no lawyers. Colin showed up in a tailored suit holding 2 lattes and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Let's be adults about this, he said. No reason to escalate. We can work something out. Consultant role, maybe. Clean transition. Quiet fix. Evelyn smiled, slow and measured. You seem nervous, Colin. Not nervous, he said quickly. Just practical. She let the silence hang. What he didn't know was that Naomi had already submitted the IP record to a third-party escrow for timestamp verification, and that the contract clause he thought no one remembered had been notarized twice under her LLC. Evelyn didn't argue, didn't explain. She just stood, nodded politely, and said, "Thanks for the coffee." As she left, Colin was still smiling. But there was a flicker in his eyes, the kind that appears when someone realizes they might have misread the entire situation. And somewhere between the elevator and the lobby, Evelyn knew he thought this was damage control. He hadn't realized yet that the damage had already been done. It didn't start with an announcement, or a lawsuit, or a press release. It started with a Slack message, a single line posted anonymously in the company's engineering back channel. Is it true Evelyn built Athena off-grid? At first, no one responded. Then came the emoji eyes, a question mark, then silence. 15 minutes later, someone from QA replied, "Her name's not even in the current patent draft." Another voice chimed in, "She wrote the biometric layer. I saw her build it in her garage." And just like that, the dam cracked. By noon, someone had forwarded an internal Athena architecture map. Evelyn's initials were still embedded in 3 modules. Someone else dug up an archived Git repo and found her commit history. Another found a screenshot from a 3-year-old code review, Evelyn's annotations in the margins circled in red. The truth was never gone. It was just buried under ambition, and now it was floating back to the surface. Evelyn didn't leak a word. She didn't need to. Naomi had filed everything, contracts, timestamps, project logs, with quiet precision. But the court of public opinion, that wasn't their doing. It was the engineers, the ones who had stayed quiet too long. The ones who finally had proof and a reason to whisper. By 4 p.m., someone inside posted a meme in the team channel. It showed Colin Riker standing next to a house of cards, one corner missing. Captioned, "Guess who forgot the foundation?" No one removed it. No one dared. And as Evelyn sat in her apartment, watching the silence unravel from the inside out, she realized something important. She hadn't pressed anything yet. This was just the sound of gravity doing its job. By the next morning, Safeguard X didn't feel like a tech company anymore. It felt like a sinking ship. People weren't talking in hallways. They were whispering. Meeting rooms were full, but nobody looked each other in the eye. Slack threads were quiet, too quiet, and the ones that weren't were suddenly archived for clarity. Legal called an all-hands meeting at 8:30 a.m. The agenda? Clarification on IP procedures. Translation? Containment. Meanwhile, engineers were locking down their codebases, double-checking contributor histories, and screenshotting everything just in case. A quiet sense of self-preservation had replaced whatever loyalty was left. Everyone knew something was wrong. No one knew how deep it went. Naomi, of course, had seen this pattern before. She didn't celebrate. She simply forwarded Evelyn an email with the subject line, "Expected phase, institutional denial." Attached was a copy of the official Safeguard X investor memo sent just hours earlier. "We are confident in our IP portfolio and internal controls." No mention of Evelyn, no mention of Athena's disputed origin. Just noise, the kind designed to buy time. But time was already bleeding. One of Evelyn's old teammates, Theo, sent her a single text. "They're running in circles. Riker's office door has been closed all morning." By lunch, 2 external partners had paused negotiations for Athena integration. A third had pulled out entirely, citing uncertainty over core technology rights. Inside the company, access permissions started glitching. Certain teams could no longer see key Athena files. The system was wobbling. Not failing, not yet, but no longer stable. Evelyn stood by her window that evening, watching the lights across the street flicker through Safeguard X's glass facade. She hadn't touched a single button, and yet the building was already shaking. The email went out at exactly 10:01 a.m. It was brief, just 2 pages. No aggressive language, no legal posturing, no bold red text. Just the new terms typed in calm, centered black. Sent from Briggs & Associates, addressed to Safeguard X's legal team board of directors, and, very deliberately, Colin Riker. At the top, it simply read, "Notice of proposed licensing agreement for the Athena framework." And beneath that, effective immediately, Athena is the exclusive property of Evelyn Shaw. The terms weren't unreasonable, but they were firm. Safeguard X would be allowed to use Athena under a 6-month non-transferable license at triple the current market rate. All derivative works would remain under Evelyn's sole ownership. Any modification, redistribution, or integration would require her written approval. And most pointed of all, Colin Riker's name was to be removed from all technical documentation, pitch decks, and public attribution associated with Athena, retroactively. They had a choice, either accept the terms or lose access to the system altogether. Inside Naomi's office, Evelyn watched her lawyer sip coffee while reading the company's delayed reply. A wall of legal fluff and vague suggestions of negotiation, nothing decisive. "They're stalling," Naomi said flatly. "They think you'll blink." Evelyn didn't. She just tapped a finger on the corner of the contract. "Do I look like I came this far to compromise?" Naomi smiled for the first time in days. "No," she said. "You look like someone who rewrote the rules and handed them back." Outside, the buzz around Safeguard X was shifting. Investors were asking questions. Partners were growing quiet. And for the first time, the company's board wasn't circling the wagons. They were looking inward. at each other, at Colin. And somewhere inside that glass building, he finally realized this wasn't negotiation. This was checkmate, politely delivered. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic firing, no breaking news headline, no viral video of him being escorted out of the building. It started in whispers, a few missed calls from board members, a rescheduled product demo, then a strategy meeting that went ahead without him. By the third day after Evelyn's licensing terms were sent, Colin's access to Athena's internal dashboard had quietly expired. His login bounced. His two-factor authentication failed. The system didn't say denied, it said not recognized, a polite erasure. The following morning, a confidential memo circulated to senior leadership. Subject line: Interim Transition Plan, Office of the CEO. The language was neutral. Pending review. Leadership continuity, operational alignment. But inside the building, no one was fooled. Colin had lost control, and this time there was no team to back him up, because he hadn't built one. He'd built a stage. And now that the lights were off, there was nothing holding it up. Evelyn didn't gloat. She didn't post online, didn't reply to rumors, didn't leak anything to the press. She just watched from across the street, sipping black coffee from a paper cup, eyes fixed on the office she once gave her life to. From her new space, a quiet room with a single monitor and full legal control, she saw Colin's name vanish from the Safeguard X org chart, first from the homepage, then the leadership page, then internal documentation. The man who once claimed her work as his own now couldn't log into the system it powered. Naomi sent her a message that afternoon. Just one line, the license agreements on their desk, ready for signature. Evelyn stared at the screen for a moment. She didn't smile. Instead, she typed one sentence back. I want one more clause. What that clause was, and why it changed everything, is where the real ending begins. The final clause was simple. Any attempt to replicate, alter, or reassign Athena's architecture without written consent would trigger immediate license termination. No appeals, no second chances. They signed the agreement that same afternoon, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. And just like that, the company Evelyn once built in silence now ran under her name, on her terms. Colin Riker never returned to public leadership. Internally, they labeled it a transition. Externally, it was a footnote, a quiet exit. The board replaced him with someone less theatrical, someone who asked more questions and spoke less in meetings. Naomi moved on to her next battle, clipboard in hand, already dismantling another illusion somewhere else. And Evelyn, she didn't go back. She didn't ask for recognition or back pay or a plaque on the wall. She opened a small firm across the street, 3 engineers, 1 dog, no open plan offices. She still coded at night, not out of duty, but because it brought her peace. This was never about revenge. Revenge would have meant burning it all down, but Evelyn didn't want flames. She wanted clarity, boundaries, and her name where it belonged. Because the truth is, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not fight back with noise, but with precision, with proof, and with silence sharp enough to cut through power. It's not about winning, it's about being remembered for the right reasons. If you were in Evelyn's place, what would you have done? Have you ever had to fight for something that should have always been yours? Let me know in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear your story.